Mother-in-law deliberately infected my baby with chickenpox. Husband locked her in the car to force me to apologize. I can hardly type this because I'm so furious. Earlier this year, my husband, 31M, and I decided to spend Christmas with his family for the first time since our daughter Annie was born last September. They live 12 hours away, so we planned to stay a few weeks before Christmas so they could spend quality time with her. At first, everything was great. My mother-in-law, Trish, 56F, and I have clashed a bit before. She's criticized my parenting style, like using disposable diapers and store-bought baby food instead of raising Annie as an organic baby. But things seemed okay. A couple of days in, my husband and I went gift shopping at a mall about an hour away, and my father-in-law came along. Trish offered to watch Annie. When we got back, Annie was napping on a blanket I didn't recognize. Trish said it was an early Christmas gift from a friend. It looked old and worn, but I didn't think much of it. The next 2 weeks were mostly fine, aside from Trish insisting on making Annie's meals from scratch. My husband told me to just let it go, but her meddling was starting to wear on me. Annie barely ate what she made. She mostly played with it or threw it on the floor. Trish claimed Annie just needed time to adjust to nutritious meals. I let it slide for the sake of the holidays. Then the day after Christmas, Annie got really unsettled, crying, fidgeting, and running a fever. I kept an eye on her, and the fever started going down after a few days. But this morning, she broke out in a rash and blisters on her arms and legs. I panicked. While I was packing to take her to the doctor, Trish stopped me and casually said it was just chickenpox. When I asked how she could know that, she admitted, with a smug smile, that she arranged for it. One of her friends' grandkids had chickenpox recently, so she asked them to wipe a blanket on the kid and bring it over. That's the same blanket Annie had been sleeping on. I was in shock. I lost it. I don't even remember everything I said because I was running on no sleep and so much stress, but I let Trish know exactly how I felt. My husband and father-in-law tried to calm things down, but Trish doubled down, saying chickenpox was the most natural way to build Annie's immunity. Meanwhile, I already had a vaccination plan with my pediatrician, and Annie was scheduled to get her shot at 18 months. The doctor confirmed it was chickenpox and warned me Annie might scratch until she bleeds, which could leave scars. Now I'm cutting her nails short and taping socks to her hands while she sleeps. On the way home, my husband tried to defend Trish, saying she thought she was doing what was best. I couldn't believe he was making excuses for her. We fought the entire drive back until I told him to stop talking to me. Trish tried to speak to me again when we got back, but I told her to stay away. We were supposed to stay until Wednesday, but I've packed up all our stuff, and we're leaving first thing tomorrow. I'm so angry, I don't even know what to say. I feel like I can't be around her, and honestly, I don't want her near Annie again. How do I make her, and my husband, understand how serious this is? Right now, I just can't deal until Annie gets better. Update 3 months later. The next morning, I got up early and started packing the car. I kept my keys in my pocket since I was going in and out, and usually we use my husband Jack's set while mine stay in my bag. Meanwhile, Jack sat in the kitchen with Trish and his dad, casually chatting over coffee like nothing had happened. Thankfully, Annie was still asleep, so I gently buckled her into her car seat and closed the door. That's when Jack came out and asked if I had everything. I told him we were good to go as soon as he was ready. What happened next left me stunned. He calmly pulled out his keys and locked the car, locking Annie inside. I asked him what he was doing, and he said we wouldn't be leaving until I apologized to Trish. I was speechless, and he used the silence to rehash everything from the day before, how Trish thought she was doing what was best, how chickenpox doesn't kill you, and how I was making a bigger deal out of this than necessary. He even said I was making Trish feel bad. Yes, making her feel bad. At that point, I told him he needed to stop being a son and start being a father. He scrunched up his face and said he would always be Trish's son, and that was the point. No one should speak to his mom the way I had, and I needed to apologize to clear the air. I felt like I had stepped into the twilight zone. I just asked him to unlock the car so we could leave. He refused and went back inside, saying he'd see me when I was acting more reasonable. Here's the part he didn't anticipate. My keys weren't in my bag, they were in my pocket. After waiting about 30 seconds, I hopped into the car and drove off. My phone blew up with calls from Jack, Trish, and my father-in-law. Eventually, my family started calling too. I had briefly texted my sister Jess the day before about what was happening, but she was stunned when I gave her the full rundown. While I was on the open road, I asked Jess to call Jack and let him know he could walk home for all I cared. Once she heard my side, not Jack's twisted version, that I'd gone crazy, frightened Trish, and snatched Annie, she was fully on my side. My parents and Jess even offered to meet me halfway, so I wouldn't have to drive the full 12 hours alone. I was so grateful when I saw them that I broke down crying in a truck stop parking lot. They took turns driving while I rested, and we eventually made it back to my parents' house, where they said I could stay as long as I needed. The next few days were rough. Annie cried almost nonstop and scratched at her chickenpox no matter what I did. Despite my best efforts, she has scars on her face and arms now. I know looks aren't everything, but I'm furious that her skin is permanently marked over something so senseless. Jack eventually called, but all he did was rant about how he didn't recognize who I'd become, so I hung up. He was supposed to return home for work, but instead, I got a late-night text from his dad saying Trish had come down with shingles and was in the hospital. Jack decided to stay there to care for her and work remotely from their house. It's been weeks, and he's still there, catering to Trish's every whim. I'm sure she's putting on a performance worthy of an award, but according to Google, shingles should clear up soon. Looking back, I've realized how lucky I am to see all this now. Jack's actions and his bizarre loyalty to Trish over our own daughter say everything I need to know. When he finally comes back, we're going to have a serious conversation about what our future looks like. Because I can't keep doing this.